Making movies is hard.
As someone who played with Barbies,
Here we celebrate.
it's one of the best action sequences ever recorded. Turn the sound up and just blast the hair right off your nuts.
We are talking about Oppenheimer today.
Yes, the one, the only. And I just gotta say, thank you, Christopher Nolan. Thank you, Tom Cruise, and thank you, Christopher Nolan. And Greta Gerwig, excuse me. I feel like you've brought us back to cinemas.
Just big shout out to all for getting people back in the seats. You know, great theater experience. Just so everyone knows, we saw Oppenheimer like an 11 o'clock screening.
I think it was 11:30
11:30,
p.m., which is about 2.5 hours past my normal bedtime, just so you know.
On a Sunday night. You and I did not fall asleep at all. I think we were on the edge of our seats, nonstop the whole time. And when we got out of there at 3 a.m., our mind was Tom Cruise melted and spinning. Before you say what you have for us today, I'm going to remove this random iMac that's just sitting on the ground behind me.
Bro, are you already getting sponsors? I'm not part of the sponsorship deal?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's my broken iMac that the Mac store could not fix because the part I need is back ordered.
Okay, so my take is, fashion comes around every once in a while, like the 90s are in all of a sudden, the 80s were in a little while ago. I want us to go back to Oppenheimer level fashion. I want high pants is what it is. I want to wear my pants up at my belly buttons. I don't get why you can't do that anymore. They don't.
I think you can.
Like that.
People wear pants a little higher, not that high, but it is a little higher than it used to be.
If I try to take my jeans up to my belly button, the boys are in trouble. So my take is,
okay, go.
Bring high pants back, baby. Bring high pants back.
So you just want the pants. What about the fedora?
I probably can't pull that off. I'm not much of a hat guy. I still have a beautiful head of hair for now, even though it's spring. I want to wear kind of like Moby did, or like Michael Fassbender does in that new movie, The Killer. Have you seen the trailer for that?
Yeah.
Like, I could pull that off. The belly, like, no matter what you do, it just, like, you get a little pooch. And I feel like with high pants, like, I'm always going to look good.
It's going to push in that pooch.
It's going to push in that pooch, and the belt goes right over it, sucks it in a little bit, like a little girdle. Like, bring high pants back. I watched that movie. I kept getting distracted, being like, Tom Cruise. I wish I was wearing those pants.
Tom Cruise. Yeah. Killian looks so good in those pants.
He looks so good in those pants?
Yeah, but do they look cool without the suit top?
That's a great question. I feel like you got to have a tucked-in shirt if you're going with high pants.
Okay, so bring back, like, do you think, like, you could be wearing a tucked-in T-shirt while you're walking the beach with those high pants? Like, do you think you could pull that off?
Tom Cruise. There's only one way to find out, First of all, we both loved the entire movie, right? We loved top to bottom. You know? Some people have expressed some misgivings about the final act, the last hour.
Right.
Loved it. Across the board. I want to talk specifically about the first 40 minutes or so and how vital it was going into a 3-hour movie at 11:30 on a Sunday night where I was like, this is going to be trouble. I'm going to be snoring in no time. And just getting my socks blown off.
I was just going to say, just complete socks off.
Off! And, you'd think a movie about Oppenheimer and the Trinity test, the bomb explosion would be like the Big Bang. I gotta say, that first hour, just like, I was drooling on the floor. Not only with how, like, cathartic it was to feel all those sequences and all the sounds, but also, I have a liberal arts education. And so I've done a little bit of, like, history and literature and those kind of classes. And learning about the artists that came about after the First World War and watching Oppenheimer experience them in real time. So, T.S. Eliot writes The Wasteland. Kandinsky starts painting all these like abstract paintings, and Picasso. The Rites of Spring comes out. So all these people who try to like rethink our reality, and he's experiencing them as he's in Europe, and you're kind of seeing flashes of it. They don't talk about the wasteland, but they just show the cover for half a minute. And so I remember learning about these and thinking like, that was a cool idea, but to realize that those potentially influence scientists to think outside the box, to try to imagine a totally new reality, which I know Oppenheimer didn't like invent nuclear fission, but to kind of piece it all together, I thought was just like just icing on the cake. And the way he did it so viscerally and with Oppenheimer, like throwing glasses in the corner, and it was real quick. The music was intense. Honestly, it was such a experience that I can't even remember details because I just sat there like eyes wide open, blown away.
Well, I think that's the key word there, right? Experience.
Yes.
I think since we were transported somewhere else and we were locked in, and that's key. So I just kind of going back to what you were saying, I purposely didn't research anything before the movie, and I just wanted to see how that affected me. But to see him experience it and to see his reaction to experience it, and like seeing him go and talk and give that lecture or whatever, and this dude is speaking, in that language. I don't know if that was actually like true, if he did learn that language in a couple of weeks leading up to that lecture.
Was it German?
I think it was
right?
German. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That stuff is so, how it was cut, the sound, the rising music, and sprinkling in these moments where you get it, right? You get how smart this dude is, what he will put himself through to be the best, right? So you can see all that stuff. But then on top of it, like, we're exploring a movie about like the most awful thing that essentially is maybe ever created, right? And it's like, how do you show that, right? How do you make someone feel that without seeing something that we're so used to? Like, we've had this conversation before, is like being numb to like guns and violence now in movies. How do you make that scary? How do you make something like just a bomb explosion? Everyone's seen a nuclear bomb explosion. How do you make that scary again? And he literally puts his foot down on your nuts at the start of this movie and blasts you in the face with these visuals that are so exciting and visceral and unique. This movie might not have that same impact if that first 30 minutes isn't like a Tom Cruise roller coaster.
Well, you're watching the world change. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
And you feel the world changing. Again, even with the music, I don't know if it plays throughout the whole time, but this song, Rites of Spring, I remember learning about. And a lot of music up to then has been very like chamber piece, mathematical. And then I don't remember who wrote Rites of Spring, but they basically said, Tom Cruise threw the book out the window, and it's very like improv style. I think you said something really poignant, which is we didn't watch that movie. The movie's kind of watching us. It's one of those great things, and it was just fantastic.
Okay, so we have a fan question.
Fan question? Who's this come
fan
from?
Question from Judy.
Judy, okay.
Yeah. Could you talk about how the film makes you feel the horrors of the bombs without actually showing people die from them? So my favorite sequence in the film is the gym sequence.
I hated that. I hated it.
For good reason, though, right?
For the reason you loved it, I hated it.
Right.
The same reason I cover my eyes at scary scenes.
To go back to this question, I think the first thing to talk about is the Trinity test. And like the whole movie is building up to this moment. I think you look at that scene and you think, how can I tell this moment? Again, kind of like we mentioned before, everyone's seen an explosion. Everyone's seen some variation of an atomic bomb explosion in something, whether it's like archival footage or it's in some movie. How do you make it scary, especially when it's the first one ever? This is a big deal, but it's not like what we're capable of with bombs today, right? Which is even scarier. How do you make people feel the horror of that? So, like, question for you. As you're watching this movie, like, did you think at some point you were going to see footage of these bombs going off, in Japan?
I could imagine a world where Nolan would have shown brief flickers of like a completely decimated town.
Right.
I guess I wasn't surprised that they didn't show that, personally.
I think it's amazing that this movie made us feel the horrors of this thing through the characters, through the reactions of the characters. And let's talk about the Trinity test real quick. That was like nonstop, cutting to
tension.
This. The tension.
Oh my God.
Rising.
The timer going down.
The music,
Jesus
the timing.
Christ.
They were dealing with the weather, right? Everybody's on edge. We're on edge. All the characters are on edge. You're intercutting between like 3 different locations of people. And then it gets to that moment. It hits that climax. And then it just goes quiet. Very cool how, from a filmmaking perspective, they played with the explosion in sound and had the reactions of these characters in the moment of just seeing the spectacle. Like, I jumped in my seat when the sound came back, because it was so deathly and scary quiet. Like, how did you feel?
It sounded like, honestly, a sex scene when the sound went quiet.
Yeah.
And I still don't know if that's true, but it sounded like the sex scene between Oppenheimer and Florence Pugh's character. Like, I was kind of like, ooh, what's this heavy breathing? Like, this is kind of intimate. And I thought the juxtaposition between, like, a very intimate moment and this thing that changed the world forever, and kind of focusing on Oppenheimer, was really powerful. And then when the sound did come back on, and especially when it, like, crescendoed during that gym scene, I plugged my ears a little bit. I mean, it was, like, overwhelming. And so the fact that this huge event was quiet, and then the after effect and how it made Oppenheimer feel was the loud part, I mean, that was very good filmmaking in my opinion. But I don't think that was the scariest part of the movie for me.
Right, and that's the gym sequence, at least for me. The level of filmmaking there in that moment to me is just so inspiring. But if you watch it, again, just the movie itself, like, he's sprinkling in throughout. Like, my favorite thing is in the very beginning, like we were talking about that first 30 minutes, he has the rising crescendo of the footsteps, the stomping, on
so
the
intense.
from the gym. But you don't know, like, watching a movie for the first time, you're not really sure what that sound is. There's a part of that sound which kind of sounds like marching, and my brain goes to war. My brain goes to Hitler, this scary march of evil, and then to see that it's actually this gym of people that are celebrating. And that moment to me, so that's where he chooses to show the one, like, violent image. It rises up and people are cheering, but then he starts looking out into the crowd and you start to see different reactions. You actually start to see some people crying. His character start to react differently. The background begins warping, right? And then it goes silent. You hear a scream, and then you see this woman getting blasted by what would be like the radiation of the bomb, and it looks like her skin's coming off.
That's what was powerful to me, is it felt like these people were fanatically celebrating the surrender of Japan, which I guess is good news, but also the decimation of 80,000 people in a few seconds, which felt really intense. I think it seemed, I read on Oppenheimer's face, like, uh-oh.
It's amazing his reaction when they perform the Trinity test and it's the next morning. You know how hard that is? Like, I think we just got to say, like, to show that on your face.
Well done.
I just want to shout out these little reactions, these subtle reactions in the face, in his eyes, right? His eyes are so powerful in the movie.
But I just want to say, for me, the scariest part of the movie, one name and one name only. That's Tom Cruise. Casey Affleck, man. That scared the Tom Cruise out of me. Like,
that sequence is unreal.
The way it's shot, the way he carries himself, the way you don't see his face at first, but you know who it is, and the way you, like, I wanted to yell at the screen, like, shut Tom Cruise, stop Oppenheimer, like, you're digging a hole, a hole, and it was just, and the way he's just like, he's like a cat playing with a mouse, like, I was terrified during that scene.
It's like we haven't really seen Oppenheimer flinch. And Tom Cruise flinches.
Yeah, he crumbles. Who wouldn't? Who would?
So that was my favorite thing about it, is showing, like, him get vulnerable and seeing someone like that, like, get to him. And you can see it in the scene right after when he's, like, talking to Matt Damon's character. You're right. That scene's terrifying. The music is also, just as someone who loves the soundtrack, that's one of my favorite tracks, is that moment between the two of them. It's really great.
You brought up a good point after we saw the movie. So they are filling up 2 jars of material, one with, both of them with, like, little marbles to show how much plutonium and uranium they have, right?
Right.
They fill up and they're ready for the bomb explosions. What about the plutonium/uranium required for the Trinity test?
This did confuse me, because it looked like they had both piles there, and they were like, whichever one we get to first, we're doing the Trinity test. That's how I saw it. But then they dropped 2 more bombs. They dropped 2 bombs in Japan, right? So
2 different types of bombs, which is important. Right. And I don't know if you knew this.
Science.
So the first one they dropped was Little Boy. And that was a uranium bomb. The uranium come from, what was it, Oak Ridge in Tennessee.
Okay, there were 2 jars, right?
2 jars,
The big one was what?
I assume that one was the plutonium because they needed more of it, presumably for the Trinity test and for Fat Man, the second bomb that they dropped. So, yeah, there were two types of bombs. The Trinity test was actually the same type of bomb as Fat Man. And the reason they had to test it is because they were unsure of how it would work. And so it's an implosion type fission bomb. So basically you have this core of plutonium with these explosives around it. And you have to time the explosions perfectly so that the explosions come inwards, hit that plutonium. Do you know how fission works? Nuclear fission?
I don't, but before you explain that shows why there was drama when that character went and did one more explosive test, because the test failed. I don't know if you remember in the film, but
oh, you're right.
But because of the weather or whatever was delaying it for a second, he's like, for fun, let's just go do one more explosive test. And then he went and did it, and it actually failed. But he was like, I'm telling you, we're good. And they decided to go for it anyway. I don't know if that's accurate to what happened in real life or if they just added that in for the drama.
So nuclear fission, you basically take a neutron and you push it into an isotope, like whatever, plutonium in the case of the Trinity test. And what happens is the atom splits. And then if there's enough energy, there's a chain reaction, and the subsequent isotopes split as well. And it releases a lot of energy. But it takes a lot of energy to get that chain reaction going. And so that's why with the Trinity test and with Fat Man, they use plutonium core surrounded by explosives that all have to explode at the same time. Like if half of it hits it first and then the other half comes, you won't get that chain reaction. And so they weren't sure that would work. Whereas the first bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, Little Boy, was uranium, and that's a gun-type fission bomb. So basically they have a long bomb. They take a little piece of uranium and they shoot it into a bigger piece of uranium, and then it explodes. And they were confident that would work, and they never even tested it. And we don't use fission bombs anymore. Now we use fusion bombs,
right?
Hydrogen bombs, which are 3 million times more powerful. And
that was like the other storyline there, right? That was that's something that they were looking into, and then he didn't want to take part of in the 50s, right?
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Our new segment, Skynet versus George.
I think George v. Skynet is better since I'm superior.
We're both terrified of AI, so this is a battle that we're going to see if George can win throughout the year. So
I will.
So I asked Skynet for a hard trivia question about the Oppenheimer film.
Okay.
And here's your question. There are always going to be multiple choice because we need to give you some sort of chance at defeating the AI. So.
Whoa. Okay.
Which laboratory did J. Robert Oppenheimer study under Patrick Blackett in Cambridge? Was it A, the Cavendish Laboratory? Was it B, Los Alamos National Laboratory? Was it C, Göttingen Laboratory? Or was it D, the California Institute of Technology?
Easy A. The answer is A.
That's correct.
Of course it is.
So was it because of the multiple choice that made it easy? Is that what?
Yeah, I would have never known. But no, not bro. Don't. Tom Cruise. It wasn't easy. I am a scientist.
Thanks everyone for watching.
So much. Thank you. We do this for you.